So hello everyone, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day today and welcome to another video. Now, over the past week or a couple days I guess from the recording of this video, the PS5 Pro has been getting a lot of flack lately, mainly for the price and the feature set. And there have been numerous content creators that have basically been ragging on this thing for the reasons I've stated before. All this discourse and fighting. And so in this video, I just want to give you guys my thoughts on it and mainly just talk about previous generational refreshes, because I think honestly and ironically Sony can learn a couple things from their competitor Microsoft. So let's get into it. So first off, the concept of generational refreshes has only been recently been a thing. I mean, it only really started with the PS4 and Xbox One era, and that was mainly because of the hardware. See, back when the PS4 and Xbox One launched, the hardware inside was quite weak in terms of specs. I mean, we're talking original AMD FX chips and that sort of era GPUs. And during the 2010s, GPU performance increased significantly on the PC front to the point where Xbox and PlayStations were struggling to play these more demanding titles, right? So as a response, Xbox and PlayStation went ahead and did generational refreshes with the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. I feel the more interesting comparison and discussion is with Microsoft's offering. See, the Xbox One was in no means a powerful console. In fact, it was probably the weakest next-gen console at the time, especially compared to the PS4. So what did Xbox do? They released a substantial improvement for $200 more. And $200 more is basically the same delta as what the PS5 Pro is, which I find kind of interesting. So it's really the main reason why I wanted to make this video and do a comparison, because for $200, what do you get with these mid-gen refreshes, right? So let's first talk about the Xbox, right? For $200 more, the console was, first of all, smaller. That was the biggest thing. It was smaller than the Xbox One S, actually. You had a console that had significantly more powerful performance. I mean, the Xbox One S is touted as the weakest next generation console at the time, or current generation console at the time. The Xbox One X was touted as the most powerful. So that was a significant upgrade in graphical quality. You also had extra things outside of GPU performance, like extra RAM and liquid cooling. And specifically for the RAM, that helped a lot in improving the graphics and improving the capabilities of pushing higher resolution gaming on these systems, right? And for $200 more, you still maintained all of the core features of the original Xbox One, which was stuff like a disk drive, backwards compatibility with the Xbox 360. And there are some other features too, but for the most part, the Xbox One X, put simply, was basically just an upgraded Xbox One, right? It didn't lose any of the features and capabilities that the One S had. It had a lot of massive improvements instead, which is a big plus for it. And even though the price tag was quite high, it was probably the most expensive console during that market, people did not give it as much crap because it was such a big upgrade over the Xbox One S. Now, when we're looking at the PlayStation 5, things are a little bit different, right? So obviously you got the basics like the upgraded GPU. There was also the upgraded SSD in there as well with more storage. All these basic upgrades for the PS5 Pro that were upgrades in the last generation refreshes, right? But obviously, the big point of contention right now is the lack of a disk drive. If we're going to compare apples to apples here, we shouldn't compare the PS5 Pro to the PS5 base. We should be comparing it to the PS5 Digital Edition, which retails for $400 to $450. So you're talking about a $300 price gap for the most part, if you want to talk about a true apples to apples comparison there. And so for basically like 75% extra cost, you're getting a Pro console, essentially, that in most aspects, based on the gameplay, is only a slight improvement for the majority of gamers. I mean, when Sony announced the PS5 Pro, they showcased a bunch of games being able to play at, 4K high refresh rate, or, 8K as an example, right? But in reality, how many PS5 gamers actually own these types of TVs and monitors that support these refresh rates and resolutions for the most part, right? So if you're buying a PS5 Pro, you're not going to get that massive upgrade if you're just going to be playing at 1080p 60 for the most part, right? And keep this in mind, the PS5 base has not aged as badly as what the PS4 had. I mean, the PS4 literally had old AMD hardware, which was significantly behind Intel and Nvidia at the time. Meanwhile, with the PS5, right, you got basically AMD Ryzen CPUs and you got RDNA 2, if I'm not mistaken, RDNA 2 GPUs, which is no slouch in this market. I mean, this type of hardware is still fantastic for the money in 2024. So going from the PS5 to PS5 Pro just for the GPU upgrades and the graphical upgrades may be good for some people who can actually utilize it, but for the majority of gamers who are just going to be playing on performance mode most of the time, it's not going to matter. And it really doesn't help when Sony doesn't really even show any new or upcoming games that will take advantage of the PS5 Pro hardware. I mean, everything that they showcased was literally games that came out in the past year or two that ran perfectly fine on a PS5 base. So really, I don't see the reason why you need to get this console or why this console needs to exist. I mean, take last generation, right? With the PS4 and Xbox One X that came out, right? You had games like Spider-Man, God of War that was coming up at the time. You even had stuff like Gears 5 and Forza that were really pushing the hardware and really showcasing what these consoles could do with the added GPU horsepower. But I feel like here, they're not really showcasing anything. There's not a single game here that really is showcasing the performance boost of the PS5 Pro. And maybe that's why Xbox is not coming out with a Pro refresh. Because to be honest with you, the Xbox Series X and the PS5 as they are quite good. I still think that both of them are still fantastic consoles for the money, and they run games completely fine without major issue. And you got to keep this in mind too, right? With the Xbox One X and the PS5 Pro at the time, even though those things were quite expensive, they at least lowered the cost of the base consoles, right? And essentially replaced the price point of those consoles, those base consoles, with the Pro models, right? With like the PS4 Pro, the PS4 launched at $399. With the PS4 Pro, basically it replaced the PS4 Slim at $399, and the PS4 Slim went down to $299. Same thing with the Xbox One S in a sense, where the Xbox One launched at $500. They lowered it to $400, and then they lowered it again to, I believe, $300 if I'm not mistaken. But the Xbox One X retails at $500, which for the most part basically replaces that segment for Xbox with the Kinect. The PS5 price hasn't gone down. You're still paying the full $500 or $450 for this console, which was the exact same price when I paid for it like 4 or 5 years ago. So you're not really saving any money or anything like that. Instead, you're just paying way more for what essentially is a slightly better console. I feel like this generation's refreshes are not significant enough to even warrant existing in the first place. But the reality of it is that even though I'm making this video to talk about how disappointed I am with this console and how a lot of other people have been critical, most people probably will not care and still buy this console anyway, just because they love PlayStation and that brand loyalty, you know. It's the best PS5, and regardless of what I say, don't let anything in this video dissuade you from getting a PS5 Pro if you genuinely think that it's worth the money. I just feel like for the $700 you're paying for it, you're not getting enough value compared to the base PS5s to be worth the money. And you also need to count in the expensive cost of the ecosystem around PlayStation, like extra controllers, maybe the VR headset if you're willing to play that, and so on and so forth. So do keep in mind of that price. I'm going to go ahead and conclude it there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Let me know what you guys think about the PS5 Pro, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Later.